So just to expand our horizons, you should not limit Waqf to school. Don't limit Waqf to mosque or cemetery. Expand it to think about hospitals, but specialist hospitals. I was on a webinar recently and they said, one of the scholars said, we should focus on dialysis centers that are Waqf. Dialysis centers, oncology departments that provide cancer treatment on Waqf. We know how expensive cancer treatment is. This can be Waqf. So we need to think more sophisticated. We can't just say, well, okay, this is land, I Waqf it. It has to be a lot more contributory to science and technology and to different forms, okay? And this can also still be Waqf, shelters, etc. Very briefly, examples of Waqf in Islamic history. I mentioned the more modern examples. The land of Khaybar, it's reported in the hadith on the authority of Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhuma that his father, Umar bin al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, had acquired land in Khaybar, which is outside Medina, north of Medina. And he went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he asked him about the land. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I have obtained land in Khaybar better than I ever had. What should I do with it? The Prophet ﷺ said, if you like, no obligation, but if you like, you can give the land as Waqf and give the fruits in charity. What does this mean? This means that the land cannot be sold, cannot be bought, cannot be exchanged in terms of ownership because ownership is given. And the benefit of the land, the fruit, because it's a fruit orchard, the fruit can be given to charity for the benefit of the people. So this is an amazing concept. It's a simple concept. And Umar radiallahu anh gave the land on condition that it would not be sold or given to anybody as hiba, as a present. It would not be inherited. Its yield, all the fruits will be given to poor people and for freeing slaves and for Allah's cause, for travelers, for guests. And there will be no harm if the guardian, the one who's looking after the Waqf, ate from the fruit. In other words, took a portion for his salary and he would feed others. And this is reported in Bukhari and Muslim. I want to mention one more example of Waqf because this is probably the best example of Waqf that we have today. Muslims migrate to Medina. There is no water. A Jew owns a well, but he is not willing to allow Muslims to drink from it. The Prophet ﷺ said, who is willing to buy the well from the Jew? This well was known as the well of Ruma, yani Rum, meaning the Roman Jew. He was the owner. He would charge exorbitant prices for anyone to use the well. So the son-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ, Uthman Ghani, he was known as Uthman the Rich, he was very wealthy. He purchased the well and he gave it to the benefit of the Muslims. So the water was then given to the benefit of the Muslims. Now, here's something that's important. This same well, the area of the well had trees, and those trees were then expanded. Okay, so the government, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they took it over, and even before that, it was managed as a Waqf, and they established a bank account called the Ummahani bank account. So that this bank account exists today. They planted 1,550 trees on it and dates were produced. They took the dates and they began giving it out in charity. But then there was so much to give that they now decided they will actually take some of these dates and they will sell it for a profit. Now, when they sold the dates for a profit, all the profits went back into the same account, the Ummahani bank account. Eventually, they realized that they made so much of money that they didn't know what to do with it. They took the money and they built a hotel. So now they have expanded this into apartment blocks and they're looking at more hotels, and half of the profits are spent on the poor, half of the profits are returned back into the account to expand the assets even further. It's an amazing concept of how the well, just a well of Uthman radiallahu anhu, now benefits thousands and thousands of people. You can stay in the hotel at subsidized rates. You can eat off the dates when you are breaking fast in Medina. you can benefit from it in so many different ways. Waqf is truly amazing in that perspective. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about a modern version of Waqf. So generally it's immovable assets that are set up as Waqf, but movable assets can also be Waqf. So cash Waqf can also be established. An example is here in Malaysia, the International Islamic University establishes a Waqf, and what they say is all professors and lecturers will contribute a tiny portion of their salary and they will deposit it into a bank account. And this bank account will be a cash Waqf. This account now, these funds will be invested, and the rewards, the dividends earned from the investments will go as scholarships to the students. So everyone contributes, the fund increases in size and continues to benefit so many students through cash Waqf. What's important is the capital must be intact, otherwise it would not be permissible. So it must be irrevocable, like all cash, all Waqf are irrevocable, you can't take them back. The founder creates the Waqf and it's done. It's perpetual, it's forever. It's inalienable, meaning that once you created the Waqf, no one can ever actually decide to own the asset, freeze the asset, cut up the asset, give the asset as gift or inheritance. The asset is already established. So as you can see, the basic concepts of Waqf, to establish a Waqf, all you need is a Waqf deed. You need someone who understands charitable trusts. You need naturally a lawyer to help you to do this, to understand the secular law and how it works. You need to know what you can stipulate in the Waqf. And naturally, you need to have some assets that you can leave as Waqf. 13th century Europe, Oxford is established. Oxford University is what I'm talking about. And Cambridge, Merton College is established. Go to the library, go through to the college, you will see a plaque outside that says this was established through endowment Waqf. During that period, the Ottoman Empire was expanding, or the Islamic Empire was expanding from Spain on in the west and from the east through Turkey. The concept of Waqf established itself in the endowment law of Europe. So during the European Renaissance and even before, you had big schools like Oxford and Cambridge establishing libraries and colleges and schools using the Islamic concept of Waqf. Al-Azhar University, the oldest university in the world, of course, is Waqf. There are many other examples of Waqf. I'm not going to go through all of them, but what I would like to mention is probably a model example of Waqf, how we should look at the benchmark. Muiz in Singapore. This is the Muslim Jama'ah or Muslim community organization in Singapore. Now what they've done is, they've said, look, we understand how Waqf works, but we also understand that if we leave it to trustees who are perhaps very religious and pious, they may not have the necessary knowledge to manage the Waqf. So what they did was, they established a property company, a property asset management company, property management company. They hired a professional property manager and they placed him there. And they said, look, we have these few assets that belong to the Waqf. Make it better. So the property manager, he thought commercially, he then looked at how he can improve these buildings. He completed renovation of the buildings, receiving investment into the Waqf, expanded them, bought new buildings, introduced them into the Waqf. So it is treated as a professional property portfolio. Today, assets that were originally earning $200 a month now earn $2,500 a month. From $1,000 a year to, yes, $500,000 a year. This is how the Waqf assets have been expanded. If you do it properly, if you do it in a professional, commercial manner, you can actually benefit thousands of people. What happens with the revenue? Part of the revenue is plowed back into expanding the Waqf, and the remainder is given to the Muslim charities, the Muslim societies, for feeding orphans, for helping the elderly, for providing scholarships, and it just continues to give and give and give. There are many more examples of this, in immovable and movable Waqf. We have direct cash Waqf. So now you can actually buy Waqf shares. You can also buy Waqf shares. And it's something that, maybe I do not have adequate assets to leave as Waqf, but there are Waqf managers or Waqf assets that require investment. So the Waqf manager will say, would you like to invest in here? You can actually own a Waqf share. What you really own is a charitable trust deed, okay? A portion. Now, to say that when I pass away, naturally I leave this as part of my estate to continue to generate wealth and to continue to preserve and promote the concept of Waqf, helping people, and like that I'm actually getting a reward continuously. So there are many examples like this. We do not have the time to cover all of them. Hopefully, in the question and answer, we can cover some of these. As you can see, Islamic Relief uses the concept of Waqf shares. Kuwait Waqf Public Foundation uses Waqf shares as well. There are many, many other examples of Waqf shares. We assist clients. We have consulted and advised clients in the Middle East, in Oman, for example, where some clients own properties, and every time they build a new shopping mall or an office block, they dedicate 20% to Waqf. They say no matter what, 80% can be for revenue and for paying for the costs, etc., but 20% is gone for Waqf. So this is how one can design Waqf. Go through Turkey today, any water that you drink, and you'll notice on the roads, there's these little wells. You can drink this water. Go into Italy today, and you see these water wells. They are also Waqf, originally from the Ottoman Empire. So the legacy that you leave through Waqf is just truly amazing. I want to give you, one last case study of Europe Trust, just to see the full capacity of what you can do. The administration of Waqf, as I mentioned, is crucial, and you need professionals to manage the Waqf if you want to maximize the benefits from Waqf. Now, look at this Waqf fund. It's focused on 3 key areas, okay? 30% is spent on funding assets, which in turn provide services and programs, all non-profit. 20% is spent in community programs. 50% is reinvested in economic subsidiaries to generate more money. Now, let's see the Waqf social activities. So colleges, care homes, etc., are all supported through 30% of the Waqf fund. 20% of the Waqf fund is in education, healthcare, training programs, and animal welfare, in looking after the environment. And then 50% is actually invested to make sure that we preserve our original capital and we expand it, we generate more, so there are so many people that can benefit from it. Now, who contributes? Bankers, donors, companies, anyone can contribute. You can contribute to the Waqf fund as a trust fund, but if it's managed correctly, you can see how many thousands of people can actually benefit from it. As you can see, when do you establish the Waqf? Well, you can establish the Waqf whilst you are still alive. You want to protect your assets, preserve your assets, with the condition that when you pass away, that asset or those sets of assets will still be looked after. To answer those questions of how, why, what, where, and when right at the beginning, to make sure we summarize everything. What is Waqf? You now know that Waqf is something that you have founded as assets. They can be in the form of cash, movable or immovable assets, but they must not be consumable assets, okay? They must be able to continue for generations. How can you establish them? You need a professional to help you to establish a Waqf. It can be done within secular law in the form of charitable trusts and endowments. Why Waqf? Because it can be preserving your assets for family benefit, but you can also stipulate charitable benefit, and you can expand the usage to sophisticated needs. Advances in Waqf, today we even use fintech for Waqf blockchain for Waqf. So there are so many opportunities in advancing Waqf. Cash, Waqf is an example of an advancement made in Waqf. And professional property management is also an advancement in Waqf. How establish that legacy, look at part of your estate, ensure you dedicate it. You know that 1/3 we talked about last week, we said that is wasiya, right? Well, that wasiya can be Waqf. It doesn't have to simply go to a charity. It can be in the purchase of an asset that will continue to generate revenue, and that will now be ongoing Waqf, which you can include in your estate plan. Who can help you to do all of this? Well, I think that you are speaking to some of those professionals already in the panel. There are more consultants and professionals out there that have the necessary knowledge. The law in Nigeria is quite specific, so you might want to deal with specialists that understand the Nigerian law, even outside. For listeners and viewers from outside, there are many opportunities in looking at professionals that can establish this Waqf for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it here because Waqf is so vast, and maybe through the moderator we can look at certain assets or certain questions rather that we can answer for to deal with Waqf, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sheikh. Thank you everyone for listening in. From listening to Sheikh, we're able to understand that through the creation of community assets, the institution of Waqf has the potential to create a robust, not-for-profit entities that may address health, education, and other social needs. It is truly remarkable and interesting structure, which I am very sure we could use to preserve your assets. I hope we all enjoyed listening to Sheikh today. During the course of this presentation, we have some questions, and Mofoluke will now present the questions to Sheikh Ziyad. Sheikh, we're not done yet. Thank you. Mofoluke, please go on with the questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Sheikh. Very insightful. So we have a question that says, what's the main difference? Sheikh, okay, what's the main difference between Waqf and a will? I believe you addressed that, but maybe to reiterate.
So briefly, a Waqf is actually, creating that asset or founding that asset that cannot be sold, transferred, inherited in future. A will, specifically what we're referring to is a bequest, is what we take off from our estate and we allocate to charity. But that does not have to be a Waqf. It can be sadaqah, or it can be a gift to someone. A Waqf is not like that. A Waqf is a property or an asset that cannot be transferred to someone. Only the benefit of it can be transferred to someone.
Thank you, Sheikh. I have Mustafa asking that he understands that a Waqf is inalienable, but he wants to know if it is possible to lease a Waqf asset for as long as 90 years.
Good question. Yes, it is possible. And in fact, if you look at some of the Waqf assets I've mentioned, like the Waqf, King Abdul Aziz Waqf in Mecca, this is something that the Waqf leases the area of the hotel for 25 years, 30 years, etc. So can you lease a Waqf asset for 90 years? Absolutely you can. But what is important is that the original Waqf asset is not depleted, degraded, destroyed in any way. It's preserved, and it continues to provide revenue and assistance to beneficiaries for inevitably, eternally.
Thank you, Sheikh. Thank you, Sheikh. So Adeoye is asking, in a family Waqf, does family here mean
an extension of the Waqf assets can it be sold? Like where they take money from the Waqf now to build something else that also generates income into the Waqf.
Sold, and the money will go back into the Waqf. Yes.
but you cannot sell the Waqf asset itself.
You cannot sell the Waqf assets. However, it doesn't mean that it is totally impermissible to sell the Waqf assets. I want to clarify. And I want to give you a funny example here. And we receive these questions quite often. Friends ask me, they say, look, we have a Waqf, the mosque is the Waqf, okay? And the Imam of the mosque is looking after the mosque, but the mosque is very old, it's 100 years old. So there is a wooden beam. And every time a person is praying, he stands up, the wooden beam is now low, so he hits it because he's tall and he hurts his head. So he suggests to the Imam, let's move this wooden beam. And the Imam says, you cannot touch this wooden beam. Why? Because they say it's Waqf. So here is a misunderstanding of the Waqf. The Waqf can be renovated. It can be improved, but there are rules. As long as you do this within the confines of the Waqf deed and the Mutawalli, the managers are all clear on how this should be done. We should not look at Waqf that should stand there and look like it was 1,000 years old without maintaining it and without improving it, and it's harming people, yet you still say, no, well, it's Waqf, and you cannot do anything. So just to clarify that aspect. The next question, Mofoluke?
Yes, Sheikh, thank you. So Ola Yusuf is asking, is it possible to have a group-funded Waqf? Because what he seems to hear about often is individual-based.
Very much so. So group-funded Waqf is an example I gave you of the university in Malaysia. The faculty are the group, they fund the Waqf, and the beneficiaries are the students. So this is absolutely normal, and you can have a group-funded Waqf. You can achieve a lot more with a group-funded Waqf because you can provide such large assets. Like in Singapore, the example of Muiz is group-funded.
Thank you, Sheikh. We have Belo asking, can a person donate all his properties to Waqf without leaving anything else for his family after he passes?
So if he donates all his property to Waqf during his lifetime, then he is allowed to do that from a legal perspective. Okay, he has a right to do with whatever he wants with his properties. And if he decides to leave everything as Waqf, then that is his choice. But he cannot do that in his will. He cannot say that when I pass away, all my assets will become Waqf. No, he has to establish that Waqf during his lifetime, because as soon as he passes away, the Quranic rules kick in, and 2/3 minimum must be given to Quranic heirs, and 1/3 can be given maximum to Waqf, not more than that.
Thank you, Sheikh. So Ola is asking, could a Waqf be terminal? What he's trying to say, he says it means, could he leave it to run for 10 years and after that dispose everything or share or return to the bulk of his estate?
So the what you are actually asking here is whether a Waqf can be temporary. Now, usually when we mention these words next to Waqf, these are like taboo. But the Maliki school, and I'm mentioning this opinion because of Nigeria and you follow the Maliki school, the Maliki school has a proviso that allows in certain instances for temporary Waqf. So for a Waqf which is time specific, but again, there are a number of conditions. This is something that you do need to investigate further, and we can assist in helping you with this kind of thing. But yes, it is possible, but it is not the original premise of how a Waqf should be managed.
Thank you, Sheikh. So we have Mercy asking, what is the place of a Waqf vis-a-vis succession planning according to Islamic tenets? That the Quran has already stipulated how you distribute your assets. Is Waqf not in conflict as same assets are being given out?
Okay, so as we explained earlier, we said that the Quran already stipulates, but the Quran stipulates 2/3. This means that the Quran allows for 1/3 wasiyah. And the Quran doesn't mention 1/3, the Quran mentions wasiyah, which is the portion you can leave as waqf. It is the sunnah or the hadith that mentions a thuluthu wa thuluthu kathir, which means 1/3, and 1/3 is even too much. That's what you can leave for waqf. So there is no contradiction here. The Quran allows you to leave 1/3 as waqf. What is the place of waqf in succession planning? In succession planning, there are two questions here. One, it is the trustees' succession planning, that should be incorporated into the waqf deed. Mofoluke mentioned that earlier. And then the succession planning of your own self, meaning legacy building and succession planning. Well, you can leave the waqf to your family to manage and even benefit, as long as the waqf capital, the original assets, they are not destroyed, sold, gifted, or presented, inherited in any way.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. So there's a question from Abdul Karim saying, in a family waqf, does family members here only mean immediate family?
No, you can stipulate exactly how far down the line you want to go. So you can say second generation, third generation, however many. You can say until all my lineage. So you can stipulate. It doesn't have to be. It's not limited to immediate family. This is the flexibility of the waqf.
So we have saying, can a waqf be in the form of a community development project like digging boreholes and support for the less fortunate?
This is the traditional waqf. The example we mentioned is the well of Ruma, and this is the well of Uthman radiallahu an. This was a well, water well. So borehole, absolutely, this is a very common waqf assignment.
Thank you, Sheikh. So for Said's questions, then, can your company provide temporary waqf to increase and attract donors? Yes, indeed. You can reach out to us, or we'll reach out to you to engage you further on what your objectives are around your intentions. So the other question we have is it allowed for Quranic inheritors to be beneficiaries of waqf?
So yes, Quranic inheritors can be beneficiaries of waqf. But bear in mind that what happens here is that 1/3 is allowed for waqf. So that waqf is given away, not to Quranic heirs, but the beneficiaries of that waqf are Quranic heirs. That is possible. So you must understand how we distinguish it from the Sharia perspective. Okay, you cannot give wasiyah, the 1/3, to your Quranic heirs. You give the 1/3 to establishing a waqf. Then the benefit of the waqf can be returning to whoever you stipulated, which could be Quranic heirs. That is possible in a waqf khairi.
Thank you, Sheikh. Olawan is asking if he could use his allowed stocks as a subject of a waqf.
Yes, you can use your halal stocks as a subject of waqf. That's a quick answer. I mean, because the dividends the answer is yes, because the dividends can continuously go to the benefit of the people, whoever have been stipulated in your waqf.
So Oluwaseyi is asking that from your definition of waqf, does it mean that a waqf has trust tendency, considering that the endowment is meant to satisfy the interest of specific beneficiaries?
This is the flexibility of waqf. You can determine in the waqf deed whether it has transcendency. So succession going through lineage can be established in the waqf deed itself. So it can be first generation, first, second, third, inevitable lineage, eternal lineage, whatever you stipulate. No issue there.
Thank you. So Akim is asking, can you borrow with a waqf as collateral? I believe you already said that, but
Well, I may not have mentioned that. The thing is, it's a very big debate on whether Waqf can be used as collateral to fund itself. So you have a piece of land, you want financing from the bank. The bank says, what's your collateral? You say, well, the Waqf is a juristic entity, and therefore it stands itself as the asset, which is the collateral. The answer is therefore yes, collateral of the Waqf asset can be provided for financing.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have Mustafa saying, what happens where there are no identifiable beneficiaries for a Waqf? For example, if it is designated to family members, but there are none left. I believe you already spoke to that.
Yeah,
I believe you spoke to, yes, you did. You did. It becomes a charitable.
Yeah. And you should stipulate that in your trust deed.
Yes, the Waqf did.
Yes. Yeah, Mofoluke, I don't know if we still have more questions, if we can round up in the next 1-2 minutes because of timing. You know, Sheikh is in Malaysia, and timing is not the same.
No, just like one more question. Which is the last one?
Sure.
Just one more, which is the last one? Is there a possibility for the suspension of a trust due to an emergency? You know, the pandemic, for instance. Can the trust be modified or suspended due to, you know, a situation currently ongoing globally?
So the original rule is that the Waqf cannot be changed in any way to be modified in such a way that it is destroyed. But in Islamic law, we have the rule of darura. And darura is when you are in a situation that you need to provide or act in ways that are extenuating due to extenuating circumstances. So there are always these exceptions. So although this is the rule, you're not allowed to do it, there are always exceptions, but exceptions need to have justifications. They need to have real circumstance that allows this situation, and they need to be endorsed by scholars of high repute and integrity that will allow any form of modification. So you cannot simply do it. It's a process to do it. However, I will say it is not impossible. الضرورة تبيح المحظورات. Necessity begets, or facility begets hardship. Or rather the other way around, hardship begets facility. Sorry, trying to translate the Arabic.
That's all from the questions from the panelists, or rather from the participants. Thank you, Dr. Ziyad.
Shukran. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sheikh, for your profound knowledge shared. Even though the distribution of estates for Muslims is confined to within the Islamic rules of inheritance, that is wasiya or hibba or gifts and waqf or charity, are estate planning tools which Muslims can use to accommodate the laws of inheritance. Thank you very much, Sheikh. We're very grateful to have you, and we appreciate your profound, informative and thought-provoking questions and answered, which you had answered, and we cannot be able to continue with this. And thank you, but we look forward to future collaborations. Thank you, everyone, all the participants, for being here. And where you have further questions or require guidance, okay. I see I cannot be, okay. Is it okay now? Okay. So where you have further questions or require further guidance on any of these 3 topics or series we have done before, please reach out to the RSVP provided or emails and on our flyers, and you can contact us personally again through our emails. And once again, thank you very much, everyone. Ramadan Mubarak. I hope we have a beautiful Salah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sheikh.
Amin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Sheikh. Bye.
Bye.